So at Meta Capability, we co-create digital learning platforms with our clients. That doesn't mean that we create everything from scratch. We've already got a lot of digital learning assets already created. It's about fitting it perfectly for you and your membership organization. We always start with the user journey. So the more you can make that addictive and engaging, the better experience it is for all. Well, it's a huge opportunity for a membership organization. I mean, you have all the assets that you need in order to create a really engaging learning experience. If I sort of wind back on this, piece of research done by Joyce Burson last year, 2019, discovered that people have 24 minutes a week to learn something new. The trouble is it takes more than 24 minutes to find something, and let alone to find out whether it's any relevance or any use. So when you consume it, has it made any difference to you, so you can transfer that learning into the workplace? So if you take the concept that time is a real commodity, important commodity, LinkedIn Learning also last year discovered that people want to learn something, but they just don't have time to do so. So it sort of confirmed the same thing. And then you've got social media that offers such a great digital learning experience, but the corporate world doesn't match it. So you've got people trying to find information, they're desperate for quality content, they've got very little time to do so, and most learning experiences are very poor in terms of how they deliver the assets to the individual. You as a membership organisation have got all the assets. You've got all of the knowledge, all of the quality content that people are looking for. It's just that when you go to most organisations, it's disorganised, it's not joined up, there's no common taxonomy. The other thing you have is all of the frameworks, standards and qualifications for your industry. And that's really important because we use those to create what we call a trigger event. And a trigger event is where you get people motivated to learn by using diagnostics. So we use your standards and the frameworks that you have to create those diagnostics, which then motivate people to learn. So what we do is that we deeply understand what you've got in terms of your assets. We work out the user journey really clearly for the users, so they've got a really clear path in order to learn. And that's the way we start to create a digital learning platform. You then become the go-to place to learn. And if you become the go-to place to learn, then the opportunity is just opened up right in front of your eyes, and all sorts of commercial opportunities can come from all of this. So the two main barriers to learning are lack of engagement with the platform and lack of transference of the learning into the workplace. So rather than me sort of talk about that for the next 10 minutes, I thought what would be a good idea is to introduce you to two of our clients who will now describe the journey that they've been on with us and the platforms, the engaging platforms that we've created for them that have resolved these really, really important issues when you're looking at creating a digital learning platform. The first is Andy Perkins from Kaplan, and he's the global director and heads up the Kaplan Performance Academy. The second is Joni Tyler, who is head of CPD at the Royal Institute of British Architects, or RIBA.
Kaplan employs something like 18,000 people in 34 countries. I think there are many barriers to digital learning. I think digital learning has in the past been poorly delivered, poorly designed. I think the engagement levels of individual employees to platforms or LMSs, whatever you like to call them, has been poor. I think if I take myself back to some compliance training, this is not Kaplan orientated, compliance training in general, it is often diabolical. And it's a bit like putting pins into your eyeballs. And I think that this e-learning, vanilla, generic, just served up, is not what people want. They want to have digital learning which is personalised to them, but is role relevant and is valuable and is designed and delivered in a way that they consume YouTube or whatever social media you care to talk about. I think they want it also to be, it needs to reflect our society. And therefore, I walk into the territory of inclusion and diversity. But I'm not just talking about colour diversity, I'm talking about cognizant diversity, gender diversity, age diversity, cultural diversity. And I think that every good platform should recognise that the different users have different choices and different expectations, and platforms should try to reflect the diversity of the users that are going to engage with it. If you don't do that, then I think digital learning is rejected. If you do that, and if you employ the technology, which I think is just fantastic and on the market today, then you can deliver very, very beautiful learning with purpose and value, which is relevant to the user. It is important to the company, and I think you can get high levels of engagement on the platform as a whole. It was fairly apparent to me that if you were going to develop and scale innovative learning for the future, it had to be a pure digital ecosystem. But it had to be an ecosystem which was different, agile, and very of the moment. And so therefore, we came up with an idea which combines what I consider to be the three essential pillars of learning. And that is asynchronous but personalised learning, digital learning, but in bite size, the way we consume information, small 10, 15-minute videos, articles, infographics, interactive PDFs, that sort of thing, combined with assessment and psychometrics. This is really important because what it does is it increases the individual learner or the individual's self-awareness. And you need that self-awareness as to where are your strengths and where are your gaps. But to combine that and to make it come alive and make it really interesting and different, we wanted to add in one-to-one personalised coaching, performance coaching. And that meant that we would be using Zoom technology or virtual technology. We've chosen Zoom because that's what Meta capability recommended. And so therefore you have this ecosystem which integrates the asynchronized personalized learning journeys, the assessment and the psychometrics with one-to-one coaching. Learning should start to become a strategic enabler. So, Kaplan Performance Academy can help deliver fabulous digital learning with assessment, with psychometrics, with coaching. You know, inclusive, diversified. Yeah? And that can actually be part of the strategic toolkit to reignite your people and reignite the business. Now you may say, what do you mean by that? Well, by investing in learning for an individual can improve self-esteem. It can make people feel valued, recognised. It gives them more equipment to do their job better. We can help them with their self-confidence at work. All of these things can start to help people step back into a business and start to rally around the common purpose, which is let's help our businesses to grow again post-COVID. So I think the biggest attribute of KPA is to serve the strategic interests and direction of the enterprise, the tactical needs of the business unit, and the expectations of the individual employees. So what we're talking about with KPA is two principles. Firstly, it is the democratization of learning. And what I mean by that is that we as a learning community have often focused on millennials, new hires. But what about the people who are slightly more experienced, have been in the business for 15 or 20 years? Are we neglecting these different layers in our companies. That's the first thing. So when I talk about democratization of learning, I'm saying, okay, let's not just focus on new hires or millennials, they're important. Let's not just focus on high potentials, they're important. Let's deliver learning deep into the muscle of an organisation, affordably and accessibly, and which is interesting and commercially relevant. But on the other hand, you've got learning governance. So we've got democratisation on the one side, we've got learning governance on the other side. And I come from a finance background. And the governance is our learning spend a cost or an investment? And unless you can actually track who it's being spent on, why is it being spent, where is it being spent, for what is the outcome, and what is the impact, unless you can do that, you can't guarantee or you can't ensure the transference of learning from the classroom, from the platform, back into the workplace. If it stays on the platform, if it stays in the classroom, the learning spend is a cost. If it transfers back into the workplace and creates business impact, it's an investment. And so the reason why we brought in an external supplier was firstly to give us a variability of scale, because you bring in extra resource, but also new thinking, fresh thinking. And I think that every technology department, it doesn't matter how good they are or whoever they work for, needs that freshness. And if you like, the third-party supplier represents the intellectual nutrients which the internal technology team can then feed off. I have worked with many suppliers in my career. I've had some fantastic experiences, I've had some less fantastic experiences. And I think that what I look for, or what one should look for in any supplier who is going to be strategically important to your project or your business, is it goes much more beyond expertise. As far as I'm concerned, expertise and experience is almost a hygiene factor. I want to see empathy, likability, flexibility, commerciality. I want to see people who are at the cutting edge of learning. And I found that with meta capability. I think we had a sense of it. We were looking for suppliers, and I think we had a sense of what we wanted. And when we met meta capability, we felt that that's what we had. And that was, I can't remember, probably 3 years ago. And over the last 3 years, I think your business has actually hasn't disappointed. In relation to those factors. I'll come back to them. Empathy, likability, innovation, intellectual curiosity and flexibility, I think, is absolutely crucial, wrapped in a commercial package.
When we came together to the CPD and the education teams at the RIBA to investigate replacing our previous technology, we and the end users had lots of problems with what we had at that point. It was clunky, it was built in-house, it was dated both visually and technologically, it didn't connect to our CRM, and it was a constant pain point for both admins and for end users. I guess the kicking off point for wanting to pursue this project was a year in which our CPD recording technology was broken a significant period of the year, and my CPD assistant and myself probably received hundreds and hundreds of complaints from members about the platform going down. It was also, both systems were incredibly clunky and has to be said baroque to use for the end user admins as well. Particularly with CPD, it was a matter of saving data to spreadsheet, saving it to another spreadsheet, constantly changing, constantly guessing, constantly having to beg our members to send in their CPD records. And while I can't necessarily speak for our education team, I do know that it was always kind of a painful thing for architecture students who use that technology to try to upload documentation, and for all the other players, all the other parties who need to use that system, nothing was really joined up. It looked terrible. And I guess particularly, I suppose, for a student audience, for whom they would expect to see something modern and bright looking and it functioned really well, it was kind of, both platforms were embarrassing and painful to use. Well, I think it's 120% close to our vision. So it matched exactly what the two teams had in mind separately, but it also gave us some really inevitable and surprising enhancements that we wouldn't have thought of. We worked really well with both the CPD and education teams, but also our technical and ITC and digital teams as well. So working together, but particularly led by your ingenuity and your solution and your problem solving, we were able to deliver something that far exceeded the visualization. But I think that probably more of the surprising enhancements may well be behind the scenes, the things that we never would have thought of. But as far as what the user sees, if the user had talked to me a couple years ago and asked me what we had in mind for our new CPD and PEDR platforms, it would look like it looks today.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I would say that would probably be a wise decision. You know, I think that you will find that if you, as the professional body or whoever it is, pay a lot of attention to your technical and functional specifications, get those right, do a lot of prep behind the scenes. I think that even if you're a small body, doing the prep behind the scenes is really necessary. But I think that you will find it a pleasure to work in the meta capability team throughout. Everybody works together for the benefit of the product and the platform. I think you'll find it a great pleasure, a surprise if you've had previous experience of working with tech companies that may or may not have been positive. But I think that you'll find that it's a real collaboration and a real benefit to work with a company like this, who are as flexible and proactive and problem solving as meta capability is.